Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast. I'm your host, David Haas. This is the Rise Up Rich podcast, which is dedicated to helping you rise up in all areas of life, health, wealth, financially, spiritually, everything. And I've covered a wide variety of topics. We just recorded podcast 30 last week. The podcast is gaining a ton of momentum. I got a list of about 10 people that are going to be my guests, which are all going to bring amazing value to you guys, the listener. So I'm super excited for that to launch. But today's podcast, I want to do about parenting. I already did one with a good friend of mine, Julie Morton, who is a teacher and has done a really good job of helping kids change the mindset. And you can go back and listen to that podcast. I messed up the sound on that podcast though, so the sound quality is shit. And that's when I was just getting started out. But anyways, there's still, if you can get past listening to a poor quality sound, there's still a ton of amazing information in there. So I wanted to make this podcast because my daughter is going to be turning 1 in a couple of weeks here. And as I get closer to her birthday and as I've been raising her, just a lot of questions come into my mind because as a coach, I see people that are just like messed up from the way they were parented, and it's to no fault. Like this isn't about blaming the parents. There's a great saying that if people could do better, they would, right? And it's just like that's how I've released all my judgment and I have acceptance for everybody because I just have the acceptance for everyone's doing the best they can with what they have in their tool bag, like. And people say, well, people should know better. You should know better to not smack your kid, or you should know better to not tell your kid that they're stupid or whatever it is. But the reality of the situation is if they did know better and they truly knew how to stop that behavior, they would. But they just haven't yet come to the realizations that they need to come to in order to become free of this. So this isn't about judging or blaming people's parents. It's just about they're doing the best they knew how to do. And that's all we can ever hope to do is the best that we know how to do. And it is through personal development, spiritual growth, that we can get to the root of what these issues are. And then we can become free of it so that we can really, truly do our best without these blocks and limits that are preventing us from achieving our maximum potential, maximum happiness, everything, maximum health, all of it. So as I'm thinking of, as I'm raising my daughter, the questions that come to mind is like, I don't want to fuck her up. Right. So, and the reason that this question is so high on my radar is because I'm coaching clients every day and we're talking about stuff that happened to them in their past, usually around parenting, right? So when I think about raising my daughter, I just think about, what was it that fucked me up so bad, right? In my childhood, right? And, so the first thing that comes to mind for me was for my dad, he had like, I've said this a million times, but he wasn't this kind of person that took care of like his vehicles, his house. And I had a lot of shame around the way that we grew up in the house that we lived in, the cars that we drove. And that shame created all kinds of belief systems, right? And those belief systems led to negative patterns in my life, negative habits that I needed to learn how to overcome in order to truly become free so that I could, go after my dreams for the right reasons. And then there was also a lot of, conversations about money and the lack thereof. I remember hating asking my dad for money because he would just huff and puff about the money, right? And it's like, it didn't matter what it was. If it was $20 to go to the movies or if it was buying hundreds of dollars worth of hockey equipment, it was still the same, like this big sigh, right? And so what that created in me was the mindset of scarcity, that there wasn't a lot of money to go around. Money was scarce. You had to hold on to it tightly. And that belief system that was installed or instilled in me at a very young age led me to believe that I had to hold on to every single dollar tight, right? Led me to believe that money was not abundant. So in order to break free of that mindset, I had to dig deep into my past and where that belief system began and how that made me feel as a kid, which was less than, not good enough, not the same as my friends who had more money, these kinds of things. And then I had to learn how to loosen my grip on money, right? And the way I did that was I just started giving it away, which is, kind of crazy. And I know it sounds nuts. If you're a person that's in scarcity, you're probably like, there's no way I'm giving my money away. But that one single act of beginning to donate my money, give my money away, help others, allowed me to start realizing that money isn't scarce. And the way I realized that is, even though I was still donating money to causes and giving it away, buying my customers, drinks at the bar, I was still okay. In fact, I was actually making more money when I was giving money away. So that changed that mindset that money was scarce, and showed me that money could be abundant. And that's kind of the life I'm living today, is the abundance. The only thing that keeps me up at night is all the opportunity that I have in front of me. It's not the lack thereof. So learning how to shift that mindset. So as I'm raising my daughter, I start to think of like, what were the things that really molded me? And I want to make sure, and I can't speak from a place of knowing. I'm not saying I know what's right and what's wrong, but I just know that I want to make sure I put her in a place so she has as few as possible limits and beliefs and programs that prevent her from achieving whatever she wants to achieve in her life. And when I say achieve, everyone ties achieve to financial success or professional success, but I mean achieve in happiness and health and relationships, and wealth, of course. I think it's a duty for us to earn a good living, to provide for our families, and so I that is in there. But this is in all areas. So when I say achieve it, it's in all areas of life. So I want to make sure that she has very few blocks that she has to overcome in order to achieve that. So what's the one thing I would suggest, like one thing that is critical that I'm going to make sure that she is able to do? And this is the simplest one, is this: I'm just going to give her an outlet at all times to express her emotions, right? Without judgment, without even offering advice, like just allowing her to be free of those emotions. So if she's experiencing anger, I'm going to say to her, just let it out. Just sit there and let it out. Punch your pillow. Do whatever it is you need to do. Let it out. If she's sad, I'm going to allow her to be sad. And if I find that she's trying to avoid sadness because she's scared of what people are going to think, I'm going to take her to a room and I'm going to say, you stay in here and you let it out on your own until you're completely 100% free of it. Because it is our trapped emotions, our emotions that we have avoided feeling our whole entire lives, that create belief systems, okay? That create programs. So for example, let me go back to the money one. So for me, I believed money was scarce and I was shameful. That was the feeling of the house we lived in and the cars we drove. The belief system that I created was, in order to get people's respect and not feel that shame anymore, I needed to earn money, okay? So this led me down this path of trying to earn all this money so that I never felt the shame again. If I would have just been given the outlet by a friend or a family member and just been allowed, even if it was my dad, and allowed to say, like, what is it? Like, what are you feeling right here? And allowed myself to truly, fully feel that shame in that moment, I would have been free of it. I wouldn't have cared what other people thought, right? I would have been completely free of the shame. But that's not what we do in the emotional world. In the emotional world, we feel a pain and then we immediately go to work to make sure that we never feel that pain ever again. So this is what the ego will do. This is the process of the ego. If you walk down the street one day and you got mugged, the mechanism that the ego might create in order to prevent you from ever feeling that fear of being mugged again, or the pain or the hurt or whatever it was of ever feeling that again, might be to never leave your house, right? This is what the ego does. It wants to keep you safe and wants to keep you alive. But never leaving your house is probably not a good thing, right? It's probably going to prevent you from achieving whatever it is you want to achieve, okay? So this is an extreme example. But we do this all the time. And when from the ages of 0 to 12 is when we're like a sponge. We're just absorbing everything. So if we're not allowed to feel our feelings, then we're going to create belief systems that prevent us from feeling those feelings. And those belief systems will become our blocks to achieving our maximum potential. So number one is, I'm going to give my daughter, her name's Harlow, I'm going to give Harlow the outlet to express her feelings at all times without judgment. I'm never going to say to her, don't cry. I'm never going to say to her, don't be angry, don't yell. I'm going to let her in a proper setting to be free of your emotions. So actually, now that I say that brings me to I think something that's important. You can avoid feeling your emotions, but you have to do it consciously. So if with my daughter, if she's about to have a temper tantrum, I'm not going to sit there and let her have a temper tantrum in the middle of a store, right? I'm going to get her out of the store, pull her out to a side where she is allowed at that moment to release that emotion, right? So this is what we can do in our daily lives as well. It's like if something triggers you in your day-to-day life and you're, in the office, it might not be the greatest place to scream at the top of your lungs, right? So you can choose to avoid, go for a walk, put in your AirPods and listen to some music, scroll through Instagram. You can consciously choose to avoid feeling a certain way, just with the knowledge though, or the awareness that you need to go back. You can't leave feelings unfelt. The thing about feelings is that they demand to be felt. Okay, so you can choose, if it's not the appropriate setting, to avoid or escape or do whatever you got to do to calm yourself down, with the awareness that you need to go back and actually deal with them. So that's the same thing I'll do with my daughter. If it's not appropriate setting for her to release these emotions, then obviously I'm going to wait until I get her into an appropriate setting, and then I'm going to allow her and press her to make sure she feels those feelings fully. Okay, so that, I think, is probably the most important, is to not let feelings go unfelt, because the ego does everything in its power. And I'm guessing that I'm probably going to face resistance from her to her feeling her feelings, because she's going to be embarrassed. She's going to take on programs from society that you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to do this. So I'm guessing I'm going to feel resistance from her, but I'm going to have to find mechanisms and tools in order to allow me to break down those walls so that she still allows herself to feel her emotions fully. Okay, so again, I'm not an expert in this. My daughter's only turning 1 year old, right? So it's like I still have a long way to go. And actually, it'd be really cool if you're a parent that has dealt with this, to like hit me up, send me an email, right? davidhaasofficial at gmail.com, or just go to my website, davidhaas.ca, and just message me. I'd love to have you on the podcast to hear about how you've allowed your children to feel their feelings fully, because I think it's so important, and I think it would make an amazing podcast. The second thing I'm going to do for her is just that I'm not going to allow her to fear failure whatsoever. And in fact, I'm going to push her to fail, because we as a society have become so fearful of failure. And why is that? It's like, well, it's simple. It's like when you were a kid, you did something good, you got praised. When you did something bad, you got punished. Okay? So from that one simple thing happening, and an emotional trauma doesn't have to be this big giant thing. It doesn't mean you have to be physically abused or sexually abused. It could be something as small as, being scolded for not getting a good grade on a test. Like, it doesn't have to be this huge event, right? But it's about how you internalize that, right? What emotions you suppressed and repressed, and what programs were created from that, right? That's important. So the fear of failure is huge, right? When we do something good, we get praised. We do something bad, we get punished. So then right away, we start creating mechanisms to not get punished anymore. Maybe we lie, right? We do something bad, we lie, we pass the blame to other people. That passing the blame to other people might create the victim mentality where nothing's ever our fault, right? This is another thing that I really help people overcome. So I don't want my daughter to ever be in the victim mindset, to ever pass the blame, to ever feel like she can't tell me the truth because she's scared of how I'm going to react, right? I'm going to push her to embrace failure, because when she is failing, I know she's growing, right? Failure in my house is not going to be a bad thing. It's going to be actually rewarded and celebrated. Okay, so I think that's the other big thing, is like just letting the fear of, just changing the context of the fear of failure, right? It's like failure is good. That it's only when we fail that when we're growing, right? It's like, I think it was Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I figured out 10,000 ways not to do it. Okay. And, this is something that I still battle. I think I'm pretty much over it, but I mean, let me just give you a real practical example with this. I have a bunch of online products that are coming out, like a ton of stuff. It's really amazing. It's like all the opportunity I have in front of me. But I know that 90% of the ads and the landing pages and the stuff that I create are going to fail, right? I'm literally walking into failure. I know it. And actually, as I was getting ready to release, I have this one-on-one coaching call right now that I'm releasing, and I have ads out, and basically where I believe I can get to the root of your issues in one call, which I've done a million times for clients, right? I know I can do that. So I'm like, let's get on the phone. Let's stay on the phone until we get to the root of your issues and create dramatic change. So I have a bunch of ads that are running right now to release. And the first, 6 ads I'm running, no one's clicking, or they're clicking, but they're not buying, right? So I'm like, okay. Now, before I clicked publish on that Facebook ad campaign, there was a ton of resistance, right? And the resistance was that I was fearful of failing, right? So just with the awareness that I was fearful of failing, I was able to say, oh, wait, this is just a fear of failure. I know, because of the work I've done, that if this ad fails, I'm just going to create another ad. It's not that big of a deal. But that fear of failing can be so debilitating that it'll prevent you from even moving forward one little bit, okay? So when I'm raising my daughter, failure will be a good thing. The third thing I should say is I want to make sure that I'm really cautious of the language I use around her, right? And I'm not talking about like swearing and stuff. I'm just going to always be my authentic self. So I don't think I'm a big person that swears, but I'm not going to hide who I am. I'm just going to be who I am in front of her at all times. And the language I use, this is one I'm still working on. This would be another great one if someone was like a language expert, or how people internalize language. It would be a really cool podcast. But let me just use one, for example. I don't want to reward my daughter for something that she did good. I don't ever want to say good girl, okay? Because what happens is she starts to internalize that praise, and she starts to seek that praise as she was doing something good, and now she's seeking out that praise. So now, in order to be a good girl, she has to do something good. Okay. So now what I try and do is I try to only reward the behavior. So if she takes one step when she's just learning to walk, I say good walking. If she's learning how to brush her teeth, well, not really, but I say good brushing, right? And she says bye is her first word that she says. I say good talking, right? It's never good girl, right? And I think that one little shift I thought was so important. A friend of mine pointed that out to me. I'm like, wow, that's amazing, because I understand the pride issue, right? When we're young, we attach pride to getting the praise from mom and dad. But then as we get older, we internalize that pride, and we start to get we looking for the pride from ourselves, the pride of accomplishment, right? The problem with the pride of accomplishment is that it's very vulnerable. If that accomplishment goes away, we crumble back to shame. So let me give a practical example. Let's say you make a bunch of money, right? And you're a millionaire, right? And then you have all this pride because you become this millionaire. And it's like, this is the one thing that I really talk to a lot of my clients about when I'm asking them, how would you feel if you accomplished your dream? And they said, I'd feel proud. I say, yeah, that's great. But the problem is, what happens if that dream goes away? So does that pride and the energy, and you fall right back to the shame. Right? You don't want to get attached to the joy of the accomplishment. You want to get attached to the process, right? You want to get attached to the process of getting to your goal. And that's why I love Gary Vee when he says that his ultimate goal is to buy the New York Jets, right? But he's not attached to that outcome. He's not attached to the pride or the praise he's going to receive when he's doing that, when he does that. He's attached to the process of getting there and the joy he feels every single day, every single moment in that pursuit, right? So there's just so much more power there, right? The thing is that's so cool about that for Gary Vee is that whether he gets there or not, he's still loving his life, right? You don't want to be working for the weekend, right? That's definitely something I'm going to be, teaching my daughter. It's like, I just saw something recently. It was like, you work your whole life, 65, so that you can retire. And the average lifespan right now is like 78 years old, right? So it's like you're living and working your whole life to retire for, 13 years. It's absurd, right? For me, it's like I'm living my purpose. I'm fully aligned with what it is I want to do. And because of that, I just love the process. I'm going to be doing this forever, okay? So that's why I changed the language with my daughter. When someone told me that, I was like, whoa, that's so powerful. Okay, so I just really cautious of all the language I use around my daughter. And then the other language I'm going to be cautious of, which I already touched upon, is the language around money. Like money in my house, whether I'm dead poor or insanely rich, is never going to be scarce. It's going to be abundant. Okay, it's like, and that's the truth. Money's abundant. There's more money to go around. right? So also really be cautious of judgment, okay? Judgment and comparison. Those are two that are just so huge. Is like, comparison is the theft of joy. And I don't ever want my daughter to be comparing herself to somebody else, right? So how am I gonna install that in her? I think probably I'm just not gonna judge other people in front of her, right? I think that's probably what it really comes down to. Is just to eliminate judgment from my own life. So I guess the best way to raise your child properly is to make sure you fix all your own shit, right? It's like, I think that's the most important part. It's like, if you have really done the work and really gone deep and you've gone beyond spiritual entertainment and gone into actual spiritual work and spiritual growth, which is like going to the hard places, feeling the shit that you're avoiding feeling, and really learned how to grow, that's ultimately what's going to make you the best parent, right? It's like when you're completely free of judgment, of comparison, of scarcity, of your limiting beliefs, your limiting programs, and you're truly connected to your definite purpose. That is what is gonna make you the best parent possible, because you're gonna do everything out of a place of love and compassion. Okay, so I think that should have been number one. This is like, fix yourself, right? Don't worry about what you're going to do to your kid. Just fix yourself, and then your kid's going to turn out great, right? Because what we're still holding on to, we're going to end up putting on to our kids with 100% certainty, right? So it's like, I'm trying to give a real practical example here, but like, if you're stressed out, your kid's going to be stressed out, right? My dad was in the scarcity mindset of money. I became in that same mindset, right? Kids are sponges. They just, it's not about all of what you say to them. It's about the energy that you put off and all of these things, right? So I just really want to if I'm in a place where I'm not feeling like I'm truly connected, I'm going to make sure that I'm stepping away and dealing with what I need to deal with before I'm interacting and engaging with my daughter. I think that's where I'm going to be for that. The next thing that I think that's really important to talk about is like her hopes and dreams, right? I'm a big believer in like playing your strengths. So my strategy, I think, for her is just going to be allow her to grow up, allow her to taste, do a lot of things in the beginning. But eventually, I think we're gonna start, realizing, her and my wife and I are gonna start realizing what her strengths are, right? What is she the best at? Maybe she's going to be tall, and she's going to be a volleyball player or a basketball player, Maybe she's going to have the entrepreneurial blood like I did. Maybe she's going to have the creative edge like my wife does. Maybe she's going to be completely different and, want to become a lawyer. I don't know, right? But I think we're going to start noticing what her strong points are, and then we're going to slowly guide her in that direction. I think when it comes to like pursuing your dreams, I think the one thing that I'm going to tell her is that literally anything is possible, but you need to be realistic in some ways. Like, if she's 5'2" and wants to become a WNBA basketball player, I'm probably not going to push her in that direction, okay? Just because it's just not realistic. She's not really playing her strengths, right? She's not really playing her God-given talents. So I think there's going to be some realism in there. But the next thing is that whatever she does dream to be within a realistic, that is realistic, I guess, I'm going to tell her that she can do it. She can do whatever she wants, but it's going to take dedication. It's going to take, it's not going to take hard work, because if she's doing what she truly wants to do, it's not going to feel like work. It's going to feel like play. Okay. So, but she's going to have to push past resistance. So I think a big thing, especially when we get into like the spiritual world, is like everything flows and it's everything. Yes, that is true. I feel like I'm flowing like a motherfucker. Like I literally do. But there's still resistance. I just talked to you about the resistance. I was about to really hit go on that campaign, and I was feeling all kinds of resistance. So is that resistance meaning I shouldn't do it? No. The resistance is like, let me tune into this. What is this? Is this resistance from the universe, or is this my own internal resistance? And once I looked at it, it was like, it's my own. Okay. Feel it. Allow myself to get to the root of it. Push past it. Click. Start for that campaign, right? That wasn't the resistance from the universe. That was my internal resistance. So there's going to be moments, I know, when she decides, hey, I want to become an artist or whatever she's going to become, that she's going to want to quit, right? And I personally feel that I'm going to push her past that wanting to quit. Allow her to express her feelings. Allow her to tell me what she's scared of, right? Like, allow her to feel that fear fully. Allow her to tune into the resistance so she can push past it. And then once she does that and goes forward, her confidence is going to build. Like, this is how you build confidence, right? It's like you push past what's holding you back, right? So as the confidence builds, like once, rich people aren't confident. Confident people are rich, right? So learning how to tune into that confidence, to tune into that internal, voice, to connect to your definite purpose. These are the things that I'm going to nurture in her, right? With 100% certainty. Letting her learn how to connect to like source power, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Understanding that there is unlimited opportunities, right? And it's just a matter of tuning into what it is she's supposed to do in this world, on this earth, playing her strengths, and then fully focusing on that one thing, I think is huge. This is huge. Now, Gary Vee, again, to bring him up, talks about not focusing on just one thing. And I think people take that out of context. Okay. So for me, I have about 6 businesses I'm about to release, if you want to call that. But it's all under the same umbrella of what I'm doing, which is like spreading this message, right? I have like a clothing line coming out. I have a product that I'm releasing. I have one-on-one coaching calls. I have an online course. I have a daily coaching call. All of these things that I'm releasing. And I still own a restaurant and all these things, right? So, but it's all under the same umbrella. And I think Gary Vee is the same thing. You would just put Gary Vee stuff under the umbrella of entrepreneurship, right? So he might be opening several companies, but it's all under the umbrella of entrepreneurship. I think when he says, you can focus on many things, he means many different projects under the same umbrella. But I don't believe you could focus on becoming a writer and becoming a very famous author and also being focused on becoming like an amazing entrepreneur. I just don't think that the two go hand in hand, let's say, So maybe that's a bad example because I guess if you're selling books, you're an entrepreneur. But it's just like you can't focus on two things that are completely in just different ballparks, right? It has to be under the same umbrella, I think, right? So don't worry about like being solely focused on just one single thing. So that would be, for me, it would be like, I'm only focused on releasing my one-on-one coaching call program. And that's all I do. I don't do anything else, right? I think that's what Gary Vee's talking about there. He's like, talking about you can focus on a couple projects, but as long as they're under the same umbrella, and then when you're working on that one project, you're solely focused on that one project in that moment. Okay? I wouldn't suggest, trying to release a one-on-one coaching call and doing a bunch of things under that umbrella, and then also trying to become, I don't freaking know, a pro basketball player, right? It's just like, you couldn't do it. Like, it's just, you have to have that laser-like focus. And as long as it's under the same umbrella, I think you're good. So that's what I'm going to nourish in my daughter is like, let's figure out what your strengths are. You can do a bunch of things under that umbrella, but just make sure when you're doing them, you're laser-like focused. The last thing I'll point out here is just like social media, tablets, phones, all these kinds of things. So I think I'm definitely going to nourish her having actual relationships, right? And speaking to people like one-on-one. But I also at the same time know that the future is digital, right? So I am going to limit her screen time, but not as much, I think, as other parents do. I also am going to make sure, though, that she doesn't use that screen as a source of escape to avoid feeling certain ways, right? So I'm not going to allow her to be on the screen like for hours on end, but I am keeping in mind that her understanding, having an amazing understanding of technology is what's going to make her successful in the future. And that is like literally in any industry you're going to be in. It's like, if you're not digital, especially after this coronavirus pandemic, if you're not digital, you're in big trouble, right? So if you're still printing off pieces of paper and, handwriting stuff and this kind of stuff, is like, you're going to be gone. I've had friends that like I've just completely lost touch with because they're just not on like social media and these kinds of things, right? So it's just like, you have to adapt to the changing environment. So yes, I will limit her. She's not going to be one of these kids that's just fully on the screen all the time. But with that in mind, I am going to allow her to use it, because I want her to understand technology to the fullest, because that's going to be what's going to allow her to be prosperous in whatever she decides to do. It doesn't really matter. It's like, if she wants to become a pro basketball player, she's going to have an Instagram. Well, maybe it won't be Instagram at that point, but it'll be something, TikTok or whatever the hell it's going to be, which is going to promote her success in that endeavor. So, I think that's super important. But I think that's it. I think I'll wrap it up at that. I would really love to get some parents that have been successful with some of the things I talked about, get them on the podcast. So if you know anyone that's like that, do that. If you're interested in that one-on-one coaching call, you can head over to my website. For Canadians, it's davidhaas.ca, and for Americans, it's the Haas Method. You can check out that offer that I have out there right now. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you click subscribe, because every single week I'm releasing a ton of amazing content on these podcasts, and it's all 100% free, of course. And I got a ton of amazing guests that are coming on the podcast that I think are going to deliver so much value. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you do that. And as always, thanks for taking the time to spend your Wednesday with me.